this brief introduction to receiving permits. First, we'll look at why we need permits, then focus on the roles and responsibilities of permit issuers and receivers. Permits are only used for when we are performing high-risk activities and are there to keep you safe at work. If these activities, such as working at height or in a confined space, go wrong, they can really go wrong, resulting in serious injury, death, or harm to the environment. Permits are used to make sure all of the proper controls are in place before the work starts. Permits ask us questions like, are the people doing the work trained, and do they hold current competencies? Is all the equipment within inspection dates and put in place? And is the scope of work detailed and understood? It's important to note that permits do not replace SWMS, TAs, crew briefing plans, or job starts. Instead, they are an addition to these documents, having different purposes in risk management. Permits always require two people, a permit issuer and a permit receiver, and you cannot issue permits to yourself. The permit issuer is responsible for going to the area of work and making sure all of the safety controls are in place before work starts. They are also responsible for maintaining all the paperwork and records. Work cannot start until the issuer has explained the boundaries of the permit and the scope of work to be undertaken. The permit receiver must talk through the permit with the issuer, making sure they understand the scope, which is what they are allowed and not allowed to do. During work, you must also consult the permit issuer if the method needs to change, if the scope needs to change, or a new hazard arises that can affect your work. In all these situations, only the permit issuer can approve the work to continue. You must not interfere with or remove any of the safety equipment. You must also brief your teammates about the conditions of the permit. And you must sign the document, keeping it to hand while the work is being done, supervising the work safely under the conditions of the permit until the work has been completed. And remember, permits are only valid for a certain period, so as a receiver, you must not exceed the time period. If you need to keep the permit open for longer, you must consult with the issuer, as a new permit may be required. And finally, you must return the permit to the issuer to close it out once the work is complete. Now that we have looked at all the responsibilities of a permit receiver, we can start looking at how we use authority to work within Downer. To keep it short, we simply call them ATWs. The ATW is associated with the SWMS, which covers the task, as well as the crew briefing plan or job start, covering the on-site risks or hazards. The General Manager approves the use of an ATW after reviewing the SWMS and the ATW scope. Permits and authorities are both for high-risk activities, but the difference is, permits are for the tasks you might occasionally undertake, the non-routine tasks, while authorities are for the routine tasks you might perform every day. Your manager will discuss what is routine and non-routine in your part of the business. You will remember that under the permit system, the permit issuer is required to come to your worksite and check all the safety controls are in place before you start work. For some of our tasks, this is not always possible. For instance, we might have people that perform high-risk tasks on their own in many locations every day. To control the dangerous aspects of these tasks, we use ATWs. An ATW is like a permit, but the main difference is that you can use it for many locations. It is valid for 1 year, and it is a responsibility of the ATW holder to make sure all of the safety controls are in place before work starts. So there won't be an issuer checking the site before you start work. That will be your responsibility. Your manager will talk you through your individual ATWs. It contains information about all the safety controls you will need to establish before starting work. These might be checking your equipment is in good condition, access equipment is secured, and other risks have been controlled. Make sure you read through the document with your manager so you understand all of these safety controls. If the task requires you to perform work which is outside the scope of the ATW, you must stop and contact your manager. Remember, You may need multiple ATWs to perform your work, so check in with your manager to see which ones you will need to keep safe. The only activity in Downer which is never permitted to have an ATW is confined space entry. This will always require a permit. If you think you may have to work in a confined space, make sure you discuss with your manager so you can receive the proper training. Thank you. Now it's time to answer some questions.